What's happening, all you dudes and dudettes? This is Dudes Talking Freedom back at you once again. This is Luke.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we want to thank you for joining us on the Dudes Talking Freedom podcast. We're brought to you by Warriors for Freedom, a nonprofit that creates pathways to engage service members to help veterans and their families prevent suicide, foster camaraderie, and help them live their best lives. Check them out at warriorsforfreedom.org. All right, folks, we have Kurt Kuehn, who is running for place 5 for Prosper School Board, and we'll be talking education, freedom, and whatever else we want to talk about. So let's get into it, fellas, okay?
Sounds good to me.
Let's do it.
Kurt, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate making the time.
Yeah, likewise. Welcome to the studio, aka my gym.
I like it, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been building it over the years. Before we moved here to Texas 4 years ago, I started up in New Jersey and building it in the garage and just keep adding and subtracting and fine tuning.
What about multiplication and division? Do you do any of that? Any long?
Depends on how many products I buy at once, but yeah, I've multiplied.
No space heater needed, though, in this one versus the one in New Jersey. You probably needed to get the propane space heater and all that sort of stuff and ventilation so you didn't cook yourself.
Well, in the winter, it does get a little chilly in here, and I have a couple, as you can see over here, I got a space heater, but I rarely need to use it.
Yeah.
Rarely. The summer gets hot. So I'm glad we're doing this in March. Yeah. Because it gets hot in these garages sometimes in the summer here in Texas, as you can imagine. So
every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
I don't know if it's a sometime.
Yeah, no,
it's like
probably
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, working out in here is a good way to lose some weight.
You can do like hot yoga in here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do.
Shout it out.
Yeah, I do. Real quick, just want to say thank you to all our new listeners. We've got a whole bunch of new listeners. Numbers are up. A lot of local listeners listening because of the school board stuff we've been doing. So thank you. Thank you to all the haters who are out there listening to us as well. We appreciate the boost in the numbers. Keep listening. And
any publicity is good publicity.
We'll keep doing our thing and providing some content. So. Hope you all continue to enjoy what we're putting out. So we got Kurt Kuehn here tonight. We're really excited to talk to you. We're talking to as many Prosper school board candidates as we can. All of them have been publicly invited, and we've tried to invite them to this upcoming debate that's happening. We've got them invited to try to invite them onto the show and see if they want to, join us to have a conversation. Some have accepted, some have ignored, but it's all good.
We're medium liaisons, right? We're giving people an opportunity to spread their story, share their story.
And
right?
I appreciate it. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. We could hear that. We could literally hear that as many times as you want to tell us.
That I appreciate you.
How much you appreciate us.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I just want to let you know that. I don't want to throw that out there.
So I appreciate you.
Oh.
So
Never gets old.
So you live on kind of east side. You're a McKinney resident, but you're zoned for Prosper.
I am.
All right. And how long you been there?
12 years.
12 years.
We moved down family moved down in 2010 from Michigan.
Oh, sweet.
Yep. So I understand again the cold winters in the garage working out.
Quick question.
Sure.
State or university?
Both. I have one son that is diehard Michigan and one son that is diehard State. So there is major trash talk that happens at our house, and especially now during March Madness. I was just telling Luke, it was, youngest one is a State fan, and so he's talking major crap to his older brother, like, you didn't even make it in, right?
Yeah,
and then,
I can see that.
And then my oldest is like, well, we're winning in the NIT until they just lost, and then he's like, and then they're like, you're losing there too.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. I'm a University of Michigan fan. I grew up watching them in New England. It was either Michigan, Boston College, or Notre Dame. Like when I was growing up, you
made a good choice to Michigan.
Yeah, BC wasn't that great. They had Doug Flutie, but they weren't like a great team. And then all my friends, I'm not Irish, and so that was obviously Notre Dame was out.
For sure.
My high school colors were blue and gold too, so that kind of the maize and blue kind of drew me towards it. Plus, being a Patriots fan, having Tom Brady graduate from University of Michigan was kind of cool too. So,
the GOAT.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
GOAT. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you've been here 12 years.
Yeah.
So you've seen a little bit.
A little bit of growth. A little bit of growth has happened in the McKinney, Prosper area altogether. I think when we first moved here and we were kind of checking out the high schools, Prosper High School was open. I think it had just opened a couple years, so I don't know exactly when it opened. It opened a couple years before we got here. And when they first opened, they just used the bottom floor. Like the top floor wasn't even like...
They didn't have enough kids
Really?
for it.
Yeah, there wasn't enough kids. So it was just like they bought it in, anticipation for it to grow. And then we were like, wow, that thing is massive. And how can they only be using the bottom? And then before we know it, now that's at the seams. And obviously we're down at Rock Hill and Walnut Grove's opening. So, I mean, and again, growth is just happening. We moved here when Custer Road was 2 lanes and now it's 4 lanes and, 121 and 75 didn't touch. And, I feel like a grandpa because I can, I remember when that field we pheasant we were shooting quail on that quail. We were shooting doves in that field, and now there's homes and all that sort of stuff. So it's been great, and I just have we've been blessed and had the ability. I work for JP Morgan Chase, so I was in business banking, now in commercial banking. So it's really been a person to be out in the market, meeting with business owners and helping their businesses thrive. And so to do that, you just get involved in the community. And when I came early, I got involved with the McKinney Chamber, and I did the McKinney leadership. And by doing that, I also got involved in different boards and commissions that happened in the city of McKinney. And so I was blessed to be able to be appointed to the Community Development Corporation. So one of the 4A, 4B sales tax corporations that's part of the city. And I served on there for 6 years, was the chairman for 2 years. I think it's either 2 or 3, but 2 years for sure. And then I've been able to serve now I termed off that and then was able to be reappointed over to the McKinney Economic Development Corporation, so the other side of things. So again, just been able to be really involved in like the different things that the city's doing and really kind of through the whole thing, being in we always said we're kind of the tale of 2 cities. We live in McKinney, but our kids go to Prosper ISD, but our kids actually go to school in Frisco. So we help support all 3 of the schools, all 3 of the cities. It's odd. So it's an odd kind of thing, but it is what it is. But it was also one of those things that you can see, and it was new for us coming from Michigan down to Texas and just the way that the boundary lines are drawn. I mean, it's like for us. We live in McKinney and we're going to Prosper schools, or, it was just weird, right? Yeah. And so...
now, did you go... Were you always going to Prosper schools?
Always.
For the full 12 years?
Yeah, always. So when we came down the first year, we rented over in Westridge, and we would have been slotted to go to Prosper. And then we moved up to Robinson Ridge up there, where we've lived now. We own a home up there. And so, we've always been Prosper. So we were always the far east side of Prosper.
The Keys, the Prosper Keys.
Yeah, the Prosper Keys.
Well, McKinney's a great town, too. I actually lived over there for 3 years. I lived in Stonebridge Ranch.
Okay.
Which is just a little bit further east.
Yeah.
But, great community over there, definitely. But we're happy you guys are here, Whoever comes to Prosper ISD, let's bring them on. We have, 24,475, I think, is the total enrollment here.
I saw 25.5. I thought I saw recently.
Yeah, it's 25,475. That's what it is.
Right. Like 3,000 more every year, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's great. Yeah. I mean, it is crazy just to see the massive amount of growth that's come in this area. But again, it's a great business climate, and a lot of corporations are moving here and wanting to be here. And I think, again, the most important thing is I sit on in the Economic Development Corporation, as well as just in my job with different companies that come to town. The big main thing is education and finding workforce. And it really all starts with, our ISDs and making sure that we're educating our kids that they're ready to go to college, be in a career, or go in the military, or a combination of all 3. And really that's my main focus as I get into this. The reason why I ran, again, living over on the east side for 12 years, I just feel that as the district gets bigger east and west, I think it's important that there is some geographical diversity and that the decisions of the districts aren't just made in the central part of the district.
And our kids over there different?
Yeah, they're built different for sure. Yeah, for sure. No, it's just one of those things of I think, again, everybody wants to cry, transparency, and I don't, it's so big and we don't know anybody. And I think that would add to the ability for a parent to be connected to a school board member that, hey, went to my elementary school, went to my middle school or my high school. And if I had an issue or concern, that person has dealt with the same things that I've dealt with or experienced the same things that I've experienced. And I think that's important. And again, there's been a lot of parents over on the east side that just feel like they're the forgotten east siders.
Yeah.
And again, I'll be the first one to say that I'm not saying anything would have been different if I was on the school board today. But what I can tell you with 100% certainty is that somebody from the east side would have had a voice and would have had a thought that did not happen today. And that's all I can say. And so some people that when I've gone door to door are really passionate to be like, I'm glad you're doing it. We haven't had a voice. We haven't had anybody that we feel that's been rooting for us.
Yeah.
And some people are like, I don't care. Like one guy literally was like, geographical diversity, I don't care. Like what else? And so again, I'm not for all folks, but all I said, everybody keeps asking me like, how's things going? I said, look, I can control two things, my attitude and my effort. And those two things are positive and going forward. The rest is up to God and the voters. So I'll let that rip as it goes.
Yeah. Nice. So what kind of things do you think the people of East Side, or West Side McKinney are lacking with respect to Prosper ISD, or what kind of changes or representation do you think that they'd like to see specifically?
I just think it's one of those things. As we've often heard in recent things, the better together, all those sort of things, right? And I think people do. I think if the nature of human being is to belong, and I think in all quite honesty, you can't belong when you don't have anybody that brings you together. Right. And I think that's the missing piece for me is, let's just realize that you can't alienate and then say we're all together.
So taking that and all the...
If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Maybe it doesn't.
It makes sense to me. Yeah, maybe not. Like it'll all depend on what the voters say. Right?
Absolutely.
The voters have spoken, and then somebody will, smack a gavel, and that'll be it, right? But all the positions are at large.
For sure. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to see a situation where, there's districts split up and you could get a trustee from each district? You could have that type of geographical representation?
Yeah, I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be against a hybrid situation from the standpoint of maybe there is certain, there's 7. So maybe it's kind of like, I'll use the example of almost like the city council that I know, because with City of McKinney, it's like there's 4 districts, there's 3 at large, and then there's 4 districts, 2 at large, and then the mayor, right? So you do get your district representation, but then there is the at large, so the whole community can vote and vote those people in. Or we just keep it the same and people just find it valuable that, hey, you live in my side of the town and you live in my neighborhood and I want you on the board. So
yeah, as more people identify with your geographical region, then you should, garnish more votes essentially.
For sure. And I think it also helps. I think it also can help too, as we're in massive growth mode. Like nobody can deny that. And with that comes zonings and rezonings and all those sort of things, right? And so it's really hard for somebody to be like, you had my back when you don't have to live in the same neighborhood I had.
Yeah.
Right. And so as much as I'm for the whole district. I want everybody to know this because everybody's like said, when I first went and I met with each and every school board member before I went to run, just to kind of pick their brains, see the thing. And they're like, you just can't be an East Side. That's all for East Side. And I'm like, you're not hearing what I'm saying. I'm not for all East Side. Again, I've served on 2.
Wait, members of the school board weren't listening to you?
Well, I think they heard me, but they heard selective things, right, which is fine, right? But again, it's one of those things of currently serve on boards that oversee and benefit the whole city, right?
Right.
And so I understand that. And so, but I do think it's important that somebody understands your area. That's, again, my main driver.
Right. I think that I feel like it was Eileen Riverside that was talking about how wide the actual district is.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was like 30 or 50 miles wide. Something just blew my mind.
From McKinney to like Argyle. I mean, it's way out there. I
It's
mean, as
Argyle?
a person that has driven around and dropped off signs, it's like, my wife's like, "Are you sure we're still in the district?" And I'm like, "Yep, here's the map. Like, put it on that road, right?"
It's
I mean, so
massive.
it is
Argyle?
Yeah, Argyle
It's
had it
kinda
all the way
too
up there, and
big,
it's kind
you
of
know?
like wiggles its way around. and-
Argyle's like on 35W. Over
Almost.
towards Fort Worth, right?
Is it? It's Argyle, right? I'm not saying the wrong city. I think it's
Argyle.
Aubrey?
Aubrey.
Oh,
Sorry.
Aubrey,
Sorry,
Aubrey.
sorry.
Aubrey,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Argyle's
Argyle's
like-
south,
It's
right?
35W. It's way over there.
Sorry.
No, that's
Aubrey.
yeah. There's a
Little
lot
far.
of different towns around here. So
With A's in front. Allen, Aubrey. That
Yeah.
might be my dog barking at somebody.
yeah,
It's probably a door knocker giving you like some political
Yeah.
door hanger.
So have you been knocking doors?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, again, when my wife and I agreed to do this, I don't have a team. I don't have a pack.
Your wife would probably beg to differ, right? Like you guys are a team, right?
She is my team.
Right.
No, it is. It's her and I. And literally, when we
team.
when we decided to do this, it was literally like, I am going to go door to door. I'm going to put door hangers on everybody's door. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to see if it has value to them. And if it does, then they'll vote. And if it doesn't, they won't. I don't have a bunch of money to spend on, it's funny, I went through and I talked to somebody about some political analysts that can, and they run all the numbers, and I'm like, okay, so like, how much is this going to cost? And the guy spits out a number. He's like, I can do like the texting and the numbers and this and that for about $29,000.
That's a lot.
To robocall people or
For the
text them?
whole thing, right? For the robocalls, for like getting all the data, for doing the signs, for doing it's like $29,000. And I'm like,
That's a lot of money.
this is for. Make sure that we understand the same position that I'm running for. It's a volunteer position that does not pay $29,000, right? And so,
Yeah.
and again, people fundraise, and I get all that, right? But I also have a heart to be like, it's a lot of money, and $100 out of your pocket, and $100 out of your pocket is $100 that could be spent on your family. And so I was very cognizant to be a steward of the money, to be like, no, I'm just going to I will literally commit to, like I did before I came here. I walk 65 houses, knocking on front doors, hanging off my hangers. Like every night I grab another list and I go to work. Wow. And
hey, that's tenacity, man. And that's
how it's worked. I mean,
I was going to say, like,
grassroots.
That's right. Like that's really what it takes, in talking with other candidates. It's I got to knock on doors. I got to meet people, because as many signs as, in my opinion, as many signs as you have printed, none of that matters as much as shaking a hand, kissing a baby, as they say, being in front of people, having meaningful conversation and dialogue, because that's how you change minds. You know what I mean? And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do on the podcast. And it didn't, I don't know about, if you know anything about our history, but it did not start around school board interviews. Like we started to talking about like what was going on in the world, like shit's going sideways, excuse my French, right? And we just wanted to get together and talk about it. You know what I mean? We just wanted to have meaningful dialogue and try to like get people to like pay more attention to what's going on.
For sure.
Because you can't trust the media, really. And it's hard to find like information about what's happening out there. So we just started a podcast around it. And then we got a call one day, serendipitously, by someone who, an acquaintance, the girl who cuts my hair, cuts Garrett Linker's hair.
I could tell by the haircut.
And he reached out to me and said, hey, like, I'd like to, I'd love to get on the podcast. So
for sure,
we had him on, and it helped him. Like he ended up winning by 15 votes, and we've got.
Is that how many listeners you have?
No, we got 15? Way more than that.
Is he won by the 15?
We're in the hundreds, and so it definitely helped him.
That's awesome. No, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
He was like, look, I've knocked thousands of doors in Prosper, and I've had people tell me to get off their lawn. Yeah. I've had people that slam their door in my face. They don't care. They're not interested.
Yeah.
I'm just some dude from California. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. And you know what? Like, I think he's doing a great job on the board because he's a lone voice against people that like are kind of like set in the way that they want to get things done around here.
Right.
And he gives a voice to a lot of the people who don't feel like they have that voice on the board, right?
For
like
sure.
Just kind of like what you're saying. Like there's people out on the east side that just they feel like they're not being heard. They feel like their voice isn't being listened to, and they want someone who can better represent them. And so I applaud what you're doing, and you know,
I think again, it's resonated to people that just aren't on the east side, right? That they're like, that makes sense. Like, why wouldn't like it's more of an educational process when you go through and you talk to people. It's like, okay, so again, there is no districts. It's at large, and like how it works and how it all, like people just don't know, which is, again, a lot of the time, it's an education process when it comes to anything with elections because they just don't really understand the full ramifications of it. So again, it's all good.
Well, if the district was a pizza, then you would be the crust, right? Like, so you get all the outside, you know, you got all those people over there in Aubrey.
Yeah.
And they aren't East Siders, they're West Siders, right?
That's right.
So you're kind of the pizza crust guy.
Yeah. And again, I'm not the cure, but I look at myself, it's not the cure for me to like say I'm the East Side, and that is.
Right.
I just think I'm just the beginning of what could happen, right? For the fact of that somebody does need to represent maybe the North Side in Salina or the South Side in Frisco. I mean, like, I think all of those kind of have their own unique natures. They have their own school, their own elementaries that they go up to. Where they ramp up to is what middle schools they go to. So they all do have their own unique kind of element to that. And I think it's worth taking a look at.
It's a compelling story.
I agree.
I think you made a good case as far as
So I got your vote?
your crust, you know.
So the vote?
You got my vote? I don't know.
No,
I'm
not
really
yet.
undecided on place 5.
It's tough.
I've talked to a lot
candidates.
of different candidates that I feel are all very qualified, you know. So I mean,
Yeah.
place 5 for me is gonna be a tough vote. It really will. You know, I think I think all the people we've had on so far, including you, Kurt, are all, you know, quality individuals. You know, I mean, for the most part, a lot of people are, right? And you get to know them and you meet them, and it's just the point that you're proving, right? Like kissing babies, you know, you meet somebody, you get to know them, you feel good about them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I think people should feel good about voting for Kurt. I think people should be feeling good about voting for Eileen and Jim.
Yeah. Yeah,
Amy?
it's a tough.
Just not as much.
It's a
Come on, just not as much.
Say these words.
place 5 is going to be a really tough race because of the number of candidates that are running, right?
For sure.
You know, place 2, you've got 2 candidates. Place 5, you've got 4.
Yes.
Or place 2, you've got 3 candidates.
Officially, yeah.
Right, but nobody's met this third candidate.
Right.
It's
or
like, is his
seen
name
them.
Bigfoot? Is that who's running? I'm sorry.
So,
Which technically Bigfoot may have just been a guy with hypertrichosis, you know.
yeah, this is true too.
Had a bunch of hair
Yeah, I've
growth
heard
all
that
over
theory.
him.
Yeah.
Was that on Discovery?
No, it's just a theory I came up with.
Okay.
I don't know.
You're not the only
Just
one who
saying.
said that theory. I'm
It's
sure
a unique theory to me.
Okay.
And I came up with it.
You've
And
seen
if you
him
want to dispute
roaming.
that,
You've seen him roaming the campgrounds in Oklahoma. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think people are probably going to want to get a feel for like if you think there are any issues in the district that need to be addressed, whether it's academic programs or otherwise. So how would you answer that question?
That's a good question. Here's what I'll tell you.
That's why I asked it.
Great question.
Did you come up with the question, or did somebody else though?
We kind of like get together and
Okay.
like figure out
Fair
what
enough.
we're,
Was it
what
your
we're gonna
question?
ask.
No, we all, we did some Google searching. And we used some search engine optimization in order to
ChatGPT
Some AI,
Yeah.
I need school board questions in this dialect.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, we just did it like 23 minutes ago, literally. Like,
Yeah. We've been asking everyone the same questions.
No.
to give
So
everybody flavor.
I think here's the most important thing. I have 2 boys, one at Rock Hill, sophomore at Rock Hill, and an 8th grader at Hayes. They started off at Baker Elementary School. My wife and I are very active in their education and involved, but involved to the point of like helping them grow to be young men who can handle their stuff. As far as like, you need to, this is what you need to do to go to your teacher and have conversation to figure that out, to figure out what's wrong with that and go with that, right? So it's not, So that involvement standpoint, we from a household have been, we haven't had any blatant like, oh my God, they're dumb, they're not learning, right? I mean, it's like they're smarter than I was at their age, and they're doing great things, right? I do think the bigger things that face Prosper is the growth. Coming with that is how do we retain great talent, and how do we obtain great talent, and in doing so, making sure that our kids at the end of the day, my boys, when they leave Prosper ISD, I just want to make sure that they are in at least three categories. They're either going to college, they're starting a career, they're going in the military, or a combination of those three things. And that's the litmus test of like, where are we going?
Do they have goals?
Yes. Do they have goals, and can they meet those goals so that they can be
all they can be?
Yes. But viable. Can they be viable people in the community to actually give back to the community whether it's working for somebody or employing somebody else? Those are the things that I really want to work on. And again, my main thing too, from an educational standpoint, is that people don't understand sometimes. It's like the school board's job is 7 members that they only have one employee. They have the superintendent. That's it. Mm-hmm. Their only employee is the superintendent. They're not like, I had one mom blow me up on Facebook that she couldn't vote for me for the fact of I don't have a degree in education and curriculum and all this sort of stuff. It's like, that's not my lane.
Right.
If I'm blessed to be on the board, my sole employee is the superintendent. Yeah. And that's to help the superintendent in the ISD push the direction of where we're going to go with our kids and how we're going to help them be successful adults.
So how do you think the superintendent's doing as your sole would-be employee?
I think we're all human beings. And again, I think it's very easy for any of us to be on the sideline of any game and point out the shortcomings of any one person. I personally have dealt with Dr. Ferguson on multiple occasions and have been dealt with nothing but respect. And she's heard my concerns, voiced my concerns, worked with me on those things. So I haven't had anything negatively to say about Dr. Ferguson. I also will say, being in the community, being over in McKinney, being in the Metroplex, when I hear when I'm out with people and say that my kids go to Prosper schools, they'll be like, I've been at certain event and Dr. Ferguson was there speaking on behalf of Prosper ISD. That is a sharp woman that knows her stuff and really kind of commands the room. And those, again, whether anybody wants to disagree, those things help drive employees to want to come work at Prosper ISD. And at the end of the day, as parents, we want to have the best people come here and work in Prosper ISD.
Yeah.
Now, everybody falls short. And so those 7 board members should be able to hold somebody accountable. What was the problem that happened? What did we learn from it? And what are we going to do going forward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, you got to be like, that situation has been dealt with. Let's go to the next one. Because I don't think we've all worked for big corporations. If you do a Google search, I'm going to go work for XYZ company, and you start going on social media and it looks like a dumpster fire that I'm going to work there.
Yeah.
Are you going to go for the interview?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? Yeah. I'm going to leave my other job that I'm fine with, and I'm going to go work here. And if I read all this stuff, it's a dumpster fire. When my kids have been in it and they're not burnt. I mean, again, everybody has shortcomings, and we work through those as active parents, like helping the teachers get to the success that we need to get. But I think there's more good things going on than there is bad things. I kind of use the metaphor of the iceberg. Like, you see the tip of the iceberg, which is the 10%, and the other 90% is just floating along with no problems. But it's the 10% that everybody wants to avoid, right? And so I think that's what we kind of run into sometimes.
Yeah.
Again, not saying that everything's perfect.
Right. Yeah. And nobody's perfect.
But
right?
I'm not a board member, and I don't know what's wrong until you're a board member to really fix and get the full story on both sides.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion going on the board that isn't being done to the public, essentially, like it should be, because they're going into closed session for hours upon end, right? Like, and they really shouldn't be back there for that long. There's not that much top secret stuff or, non-essential or non-public stuff that they have to talk about. So I know that was a big concern of Jim Herblin's, and he brought up some really good points surrounding that.
I can tell you that I sit on the Economic Development Corporation, and we do our pleasantries and all those sort of things that they kind of do at the school board meetings, and then the rest of my meeting is behind closed doors. Right? It's an executive session, and again, I'm not on school board to know exactly what's being discussed in the back, right?
Right.
But at some point, I have to give some sort of there's got to be a reason why you're back there. And to your point, if I was out there and it was like, why are we discussing this back there? I mean, the people that have come on this podcast, Garrett's on there. Garrett's come on your podcast and gave you some updates. I've seen through those things. Yeah. I mean, has it come down to a school board member saying, man, 80% of the stuff we're talking back there, we should be talking up front? Because there's a lot of legalities of this stuff. I mean, we common sense sometimes, as much as we're like, they should be able to do that. Well, as much as maybe somebody would want to do that, they can't do that. And I don't know if I don't know the whole story, right? And
nobody does.
Right. And so that's the problem, that nobody does.
But can you hide behind that and just say there's just too much information that's private? And my understanding, at least from the research I've done on it, is that you unless you're specifically talking about students or parents or individuals by name, or a very specific problem, or an investigation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those are things that are reserved for executive session. But if you're talking about your reasons for why you would vote a certain way, or that, those are conversations that should be in the public eye, because people need to understand, what are the concerns? Why would you vote this way and not this way? Why, you know what I mean? Those debates
for sure
should be happening more in a public forum. Now, that's not to say that the people in the room can be like the peanut gallery and start
chirping in.
They need to be quiet and they need to listen and they need to be respectful. But those debates should be happening in public. They shouldn't be going back in for 4 hours. I mean, I can't imagine anything taking 4 hours to have that conversation without that's all that private information. You know what I mean? And then they come back and they say, hey, here's how we're voting. Those are the kinds of things that I think are setting some people off in the community,
for sure,
and in the district, and are concerning to a lot of parents, and are disillusioning a lot of parents with the way things are handled.
For sure.
And again, I'm with you. I don't know what's going on because I'm not in the room when they have these discussions. And we haven't had Garrett on in a couple of months.
He hasn't told us what's going on behind the curtain.
No, never.
And
he can't. I mean, he can't. Right. But that. I mean, in executive session, he can't legally tell you what they're talking about.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, it's unfortunately sometimes there's a lot of experts that don't have a lot of the information that they're claiming to be experts, right? And so my big thing, again, like I told you, geographical diversity is my main goal. And then once I'm on the board, to use common sense, pragmatic approach to whatever problem comes up. And if you've seen me on any other boards I sit on, I'm not afraid to ask a question. I'm not afraid to be like, well, that doesn't make sense. Let me just understand that more. Let me see the other side of it. Because again, there's two sides of two sides of the coin. And I think, unfortunately, in the school board setting, sometimes it seems like everybody's trying to get it to go down one railroad track, from a metaphor, right? Down the track. And it's an ISD made up of all people, left, right. So it's more of like an 8-lane highway. We just need the highway to go down the right track, right?
Right, yeah.
In the right direction. And too often we're trying to smash it down so it has to fit on that railroad track. And if it doesn't fit on the railroad track, we're all not happy that it's not on the railroad track, right? Yeah. But we just need to make sure it's going down the right direction, because at the end of the day, if my kid can go to college, or have a career, or go in the military, or a combination of three, I'm a happy parent. Right. Because eventually he'll be out of my house.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking to do.
Off my payroll.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
And that might sound simplistic, and you're like, oh, he doesn't have enough of a fight. It's like, no, I have enough to be like, I want to hear what the problems are and come up with a solution. The problem is we hear a lot of problems and we hear a lot of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, great. So that's your problem. What's the solution to that? I think when we got frozen in the other day, when frozen in a couple months ago, I literally went back and watched 2 years of school board meetings.
Really?
Watching. Wow. And I would say the best speakers on the whole school board meeting were 2 young ladies that were in the French class. If you remember, if you were ever at that school board, like they were French students that went up to like French 3 and the school didn't offer French 4. And so they were disappointed because they wanted to continue their education in French. And so they literally went up there and spoke, said, here's our problem. We would like to do in a co-classroom with the French 3 class so that we can like help them and immerse ourselves more in French. Our teachers willing to have a curriculum just for us so that we can like, take the next level. That's what we'd like to do. Yeah. And you're like, finally, somebody comes with a problem and a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then when it comes to addressing the school board, it's like, here's my thing. I mean, we have to do a whole bunch of legalities on what you can say and don't say this and all sorts of stuff. How about we just say it? We can get to the point of like, I would like you to come up and address the school board like you would instruct your child to have a conversation with their parent, with their teacher.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that when they only give you a minute, though.
You got a minute to talk to your teacher. How do you talk to them in the most effective way to get your point across?
Yeah.
I'm with you, right? I mean, the whole like circling back and forth and how much time and all this, it is what it is, but there's a process and there's a thing. We just got to, I think instead of like trying to break everything, just there's at some point you got to be like, how can we win within the guardrails?
Yeah.
When I look at the composition of all these school board meetings, in like a time composition, I feel like they spend a lot of time on the dog and pony show of it, where they could just get down to, the problem solution phase of that meeting, and probably allocate a little bit more time towards the problem solution phase, which seems to me to be like the main purpose of the meeting, rather than a lot of congratulatory dog and pony show stuff. But
I agree. But so like, would you say the stuff that's on most of the school board, most of the stuff that takes most of the time when you're at the school board meetings are not stuff that's on the agenda, but the off comments.
Yeah.
And again, I'm all for somebody coming up before the school board and voicing their concern, right? But at some point it's like, what's the necessary thing to get, you had a problem, like where are we, right? It's one thing is you like went up there and like, hey, I just want to let you know from the school board so that you guys, again, know, because your sole employee is the superintendent. So you as a school board, I want you to let you know that I contacted such and such. I contacted such and such. I got response from him. I contacted such and such. This is the process it is. Can you please work with the superintendent to look into my problem?
Yeah.
And then if they want to speak, it wasn't solved by the next month, they go to the next month, like, hey, I just want to come back up here and say that I've reached back out to such and such, such and such, such and such, and I'd like to know where we're at with that. And they're not going to respond because they don't respond, but like you can have one-off conversations with the school board member. And if I'm a school board member, when I'm a school board member, I guarantee that I will have meetings over wherever we want to be like, something's on the agenda. You guys want to discuss it? Let's discuss it.
Yeah. Open door policy.
Yeah. I think, one of the council members over in McKinney does a fantastic job, Justin Beller. He'll literally like, here's the agenda. I'm going to be at the library today from such and such and such as us. If anybody wants to have a conversation about what's on the agenda, well, stop by. Right. And if nobody stops by, he sits there and does his research while he's trying to figure that out and then goes to.
Yeah. That's
his next appointment.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Actually. I think a lot of parents, we talked at the beginning of the show about growth.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
And the exponential growth here in Prosper has gotten to a point where it's seemingly becoming unmanageable almost, because you're going to have so many, with growth comes problems, right? I feel like every week I'm hearing about
more money, more problem.
More, yeah. problems in school, people pulling their kids out of school and taking them into homeschool. More and more parents are becoming disillusioned with like the drug problems in the high school or the bullying issues and like the not handling of some of those things. And while it's all well and good to say, hey, I just want my kid to get a good education and graduate and like go into one of 3 or 4 disciplines, but like a lot of parents are concerned that their kids aren't going to get to that point because of all these other issues. A lot of parents are saying, hey, why are these books with suspect, pictures and content in an elementary school or in a middle school when children should? Why are educators having these types of conversations with these students when they probably shouldn't? And so those are genuine concerns that parents have. For sure. that create this disillusionment with the system. And when they, it's hard to not get frustrated when you're a parent of a child who gets bullied, or when you're a parent of a child who has, sexually explicit content exposed to them in some form or fashion, whether a book or a Chromebook or however else that comes out, right? So when you then try to get that addressed and you feel like nothing is happening, it becomes, and then you don't know where else to go. And then you voice your opinion at a school board meeting, or you voice your opinion on Facebook, and more people see it. And then they're like, well, I heard this, and I have a friend, or this happened to my student or my child in school. And so the more of that starts to happen, because these schools become overcrowded and there are more people in the school, and then, by the way, like sometimes it's a parent problem, right? Maybe the parent is a bully. Yeah. And the parent is addressing things.
It's usually not taught, it's caught, right?
It's caught, 100%. And that's part of the problem, right? Like the actions of a parent rub off on the child, and then the child will go to school and it will treat other children the way that parent may treat.
Well, how about
other adults?
I was just at the Superintendent Advisory Council, and how about we have teachers that are literally being bullied by our parents, and they're blowing up their social feeds and like nonstop blowing them up to the point where like we have parents that want to quit. I mean, we have teachers that want to quit because it's like, I didn't teach to like be bullied by parents.
It goes the other way too.
It goes the other way, right? For sure.
Parents.
Oh, totally. I mean, again, I think it's one of those things it's really hard, because as you talk through that, it's like it would be easy if we were all the same and we were all in the same vacuum. Yeah. But we have how many?
That ain't what makes the world go around, though.
Right. Yeah. For sure. How many thousands of people, how many thousands of kids do we have, which equates to how many different households, which equates to how many different values, which equates to how many different, you know what I'm saying? It goes on and on and on. And it's
diversity,
like, yeah. And it's like, we work in a workforce that you're like, I don't like that guy that I work with. Or I don't like that boss I work with. Right? I mean, it's like, it's one of those things. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is like, I want it to be just the way that I want it. And I think, unfortunately, every parent does have that feeling like, I want the direction to be the direction I want. The unfortunate part about it in reality is there's 25,000 other parents that want the direction that they want.
Right.
50, and how do you,
50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you,
yeah, right.
Maybe. How do you get that in a productive way so that you cause as little ripples as you can, but still drive the car down the expressway the direction that you need to drive? That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in certain things though, it's like, all right, look, if there's a problem with drugs in the school, we got to address problems with drugs in the school. Flat out. Like, if there are enough parents that have concerns about that, then that's a problem that needs to be identified.
For sure, but also, right? Doesn't that relate to
because it could affect
is that also not a situation where if there's drugs in the school, there's drugs in our community, we got to fix that too, right?
100%.
And so it comes from somewhere. It's just it just shows up in our schools because it affects our child one way or another, right? So I mean, it's one of those things that it's like, it's just a precursor to our community.
A
symptom. There you go. That's the word. That's what I'm looking for.
What I'll say about that is, I mean, when I was growing up, there were drugs and like kids were smoking weed and doing stuff in school, like,
in Boston and New Jersey.
And not in school though. Like kids weren't going to school on drugs. Kids weren't doing drugs in class. They were in Oklahoma. You know, like I mean, not from what I understand.
They were in New Jersey.
It's
and
more
Michigan
of a problem,
too.
here, right? And I get it, like the numbers and so that, but I just think kids feel a little bit more brazen to be able to do these things, and I don't feel like it doesn't seem to me or feel to me like there is as much of a consequence for that.
Totally agree.
And that I think is what's really bothering parents. And I'm just using that one example.
No, but totally agree.
Right?
But let's go down the rabbit hole for the fact of like there needs to be a consequence for something, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And then you like throw down the hammer, and the parent comes in and goes, "What's wrong with that?"
Yeah.
What do you call me in this in for?
It's illegal.
What's wrong with that? Let's just say it's not drugs, right?
Yeah.
Like where it's a legality thing, but something else, right? That's like subjective to whatever the parent says. Parent comes in and goes, "What's that about?" And you're like, "This is what he did. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't fit our standards." I think there's fine. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I think you're being too harsh. But I'm saying these are what we're dealing with every single day. I mean, if we're going to talk about the good old days.
If you're that parent,
remember when it was
check yourself.
Think about the community you live in today. I mean, there's probably some parents that when
they think their kids are perfect.
Their kids doing something in your front porch, and you're like, you go over there. Hey, I just want to let you know, Jimmy's been doing this. He's like, "Yeah, what about it?"
Yeah. Some parents just don't care. They take the free range. They care, but they free range their children.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's
they've
difficult.
abdicated to the school, and they don't take as much of an active role in disciplining their.
I mean, I remember
child.
talking to the now superintendent of McKinney when he was the AD, and he literally got called into a situation where a young lady was texting inappropriate pictures to somebody on the football team that got around the football team. And when he called in the parent to be like, "This is what your daughter sent to Jimmy," and she was like, "And?" And he's like, "What do you mean, and? That's not appropriate, and it's causing this disruption and blah, 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 blah." But it's those sort of things. And again, I say that's the tip of the iceberg because I think, to be honest with you, most of the parents are the 90% that are floating under with no problem. But it's the 10% that gets blown up on social media, that gets blown up on Nextdoor, all those sort of things that sometimes become something of its own. And I could be wrong.
Well, it's like I
mean, I don't know the statistics.
I don't either. I don't either.
But I feel like it seems like every other day or twice a week, I'm hearing another story or another issue.
For sure.
And there's another post on Facebook about a kid getting bullied in school or a kid, Do you know what Facebook would look like when we were in school? I mean,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, think about it. Like, to be honest with you,
I don't know if I would have known how to use it.
But I'm just saying. I mean,
know how to use it now, Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, what would have been reported from your school? What would have been from you knocking doors and running down the street with next door of who's this hoodlum knocking on front doors and all those sort of things? Like,
it would be bad.
Ding dong ditch.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call
all
it.
that stuff.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean,
more.
it's those sort of things that I think sometimes it's like, again, it's not sexy and it doesn't sell bumper stickers, but it all starts in the home.
It does. You're not wrong on that.
It all starts in the home, but unfortunately, it all gets dumped on the school.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying, right? Like about parents, a percentage of parents have abdicated parental duties to the teachers, and that's not right. They should not be treating teachers as babysitters. They should be teachers, right? They're there to educate our youth. They're not there to babysit and rear our children.
For sure.
Now, some teachers feel like it's on them to do that regardless, and that's not their place either.
For sure.
Right? Like
For sure.
You're not their mom. You're not their second mom. You're not like. You're their teacher, and you should act like their teacher, not their mom. You're not their mother. They have a mom, hopefully, that mom and or a dad at home. But in the event that they don't, it's still the responsibility of the parent to bring up that child, not to just hand it off to the teachers, and then they come home, and I get there's extenuating circumstances always, and there's always some certain issues here and there. But if there are enough of these kind of problems, like if you're hearing about like bullying being a problem, I'm just using examples here, but if bullying is a problem that's kind of like consistent, then it should be addressed, right? It should be looked into, and there should be some consequences. And again, I'm going to use an example. Like I'm not specifying that something like this happened. I'm just saying, like, if it's an athlete on the football team and they're bullying some kid in math class, and
very stereotypical, but yeah,
very stereotypical. I know people can relate to that. You know what I mean? It's like
tell you what side he was on, right?
Jock, you know,
he was in
the
math club, but he just works out now.
I was on the chess team, you know, but I played soccer, but I got bullied by football kids, and I got in fights with kids on the football team. I mean, because they would pick on me because
I often
their
tell my wife,
cheerleader girlfriend would flirt with me, and like, oh, hey, sorry, dude, like I don't know what to tell you. But
I often have conversations with my wife when the boys come home with certain issues, and she will get all reared up, and I'll go, "Is this your high school problem, or is this their high school problem?"
Yeah, totally.
Right?
You're right.
And I think sometimes a lot of us parents need to check that. Right?
I agree with you.
Back that whole thing is this my high school problem, or is this my kid's high school problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because sometimes we like look into things that like they don't even like. Your fight. I mean, I know as a parent of a sports kid, right? Like I'm more involved than my parents ever were when going to games and that sort of stuff. And you see different things like playtime and this and that. And so like you come home all fired up, right? And I'll be like, "So what do you think, Noah?" And he'd be like, "It's fine. It's all good."
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, he don't even care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I could get him all fired up and turn it all up on, and I could get all the parents fired up, and it's like, for what?
Yeah, but you're having the conversation with your child, and that's again, it goes back to. Like,
but again, it comes back to
the parent.
All parents are not the same.
Right. Well, right, and so that's where I think.
So what do you do with the parent? What do you do with the kids that don't have those parents having those conversations? That come to school, that teacher,
if they're causing trouble, then there needs to be consequences.
What's the consequence
for bullying?
No, I mean like sending them home. And then the parent's not home, and then I mean it's like
I don't know. They still have detention. Like, don't they? Can't you just put them in a different room and have like someone sit in there and be like,
I just think it's an interesting thing.
You're going to sit here for 4 periods and do nothing because you're suspended.
Right.
You know,
it seems like they
I don't know, something like figure it out. You know. Figure it out. Like there are solutions. You can come up with a solution. You just got to figure it out.
You're talking to a person who, my dad was a police officer, right?
Yeah.
There was consequences to your action.
Yeah.
I'm a very big thing of there's consequences to your actions. Yeah. Like all of a sudden there's a situation. It's like, what were the police called for in the first place? Mm-hmm. Right? They didn't just show up.
Right.
There was a reason they showed up.
Right.
And then, but now it's whatever happened is their fault or whatever. It's like, but fair. They handled it wrong or they didn't handle it wrong, but let's back up to why they were even there.
Yeah.
And let's fix that problem and hold that person accountable.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be honest, we live in a culture of no accountability.
I could not agree more with that
so
statement.
We live in that culture, but yet we see that thing and we're all in up arms.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to put themselves in that situation. And what if that was my kid type situation, right? Like,
well, I think people should think like that. Like, what if that was my kid? What, like, if my child was bullying another child, like, how would I handle that?
Right.
I wouldn't ignore it.
For sure.
I can tell you that.
For sure.
But to Kurt's point, it's the tip of the iceberg, right? It's like the local news where all they report is all the most terrible shit that happened of the day.
And they report report it in a way that the percentage looks bad or in a certain slant, right? And
There's
then you're
statistics,
like,
they're always accurate.
Right. And I'm like, they are always accurate. But how you read them is totally different, right? And so like something come on, I'm like, yeah, babe, but there's another side to that. Like it's up 100%, but what was the real number? What was the raw number that made it up 100%?
Yeah.
One more?
Right. Yeah, if it went from 1 to 2, it's like, okay. But if it went from like
but you don't know that when they're saying,
100,
we have 100%
Was it a penny
problem.
stock or was it Apple?
There you go.
Like,
There you go. So, I mean, again, I think a lot of the times it's easier said than done, but you need to take a deep breath and look at the whole situation before anybody starts unloading on anything. Because there's always 2 sides to every story.
Right.
And they're both right.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
I have 4 kids in my household, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't do
And
it.
there's 4 different stories.
I didn't do
Not just
it.
2.
I didn't do it. Does more stuff at my house than I know who does.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't do it.
Oh yeah, it wasn't me.
Wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
It was
Shaggy is everywhere.
Shaggy is everywhere.
It wasn't me.
You know, so
Can we
again,
dub that in, Daniel? It wasn't me.
so again, I think it's a really hard job. I think it's one of those things that, again, educating our kids is really important for not only our community but our state and our country, and we just need to make sure that we're working in the right directions with our school and our teachers to ensure that our kids are getting what they need to get. And to be honest with you, I don't know. Do you remember yourself as a high school kid in your grades? And sometimes you forget, like, I'm jamming on my kids to be 100%, but yet I don't know that I was 100% at that all the time.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I try my best.
But you know what I'm saying? But you can really get into
back.
that, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You always want your kid to be the best that they can be, and you sometimes will put more pressure on your kids because if you know they can do better, or you believe they can be better than what they're actually doing. And I think it's important, it goes back to the parenting thing.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's important as a parent to recognize, and my wife and I, we look at all of our kids and we try to, be as practical as we can with each of them as individuals, because they're all different.
For sure.
They all learn differently.
Mm-hmm.
They all score differently. They all, they're better at certain things than other things, right? And so,
but yet they're in a culture. And I read a book, and it was on my Facebook that I posted on the Facebook, that schools can't do it alone. And it was an interesting read. And you probably have heard the story about the blueberries and how school has to take all the blueberries. They don't just get to pick the best ones. Right. They get all of them, right? But the other part of that whole thing was that, think about in the educational system how it's changed, that they're in a system where they have to learn within a set time period the informational stuff, whether they learn slower, whether they learn at a different pace, whether they learn at a faster pace. Like, nowhere else in life but K through 12 do they have to learn in a set period of time to graduate to the next level. And then if they don't learn in that period of time, that's the most thing, then it's a stigma to them because nobody else has to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so it is an interesting thing that sometimes maybe it is, it'll be very hard with lobbyists and all that sort of stuff, but a way to look at changing the way our educational system is. I mean,
you said it, man.
I mean,
Your
it's one of
lips
those
to
things.
God's ears,
Yeah,
man.
but-
I've been saying the
but if you-
system's broken.
Yeah, but totally broken. But if you really look at the way that it started, and in that book, the stuff that it started with, why we even have a public education to what the public education now has to teach, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But the crazier part about it is the time in which the kids are in school hasn't changed.
Nope.
Hasn't changed. And literally, we also forget that the reason why they had public education when it first came out, I think it was Thomas Jefferson who started it, was literally it was a way to select and divide the educated versus the doers. That's what it's for. If you made it to if you were smart enough to make it to the level, you went to the next grade. If you weren't smart enough to go to the next level, go to the farm.
Academia.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it was intended for.
Yeah.
And then the Industrial Revolution came, and it was one like, how can we help make our kids so that they change on the bells, they do the right things because they're going to go to the factory.
Drones.
Right.
Yeah.
How do they do it to the next
Drones
level?
and clones.
And so it's one of those things that, it's a very hard thing, but it's like you sometimes look at it and you're like, I don't know how you get all that in.
But if you look at the progression of industry, essentially, right? Like agrarian society, industrial society, all these things.
Yeah.
It took a long time for those things to occur. Whereas you have this technological revolution and now you have AI, like things are moving faster.
Yeah.
Things are changing faster. And this is a big clunky system for sure. And it always has been and always will be. The bigger it gets, the clunkier it is, right? Generally speaking, until we, achieve that milestone, right? Of making a big ship move fast and nimble. But, we're just going to have to try and keep up and pivot to a system that makes a whole lot more sense. And right now, I think that we're being bogged down by a whole lot of just stuff that isn't basic stuff.
Minutia.
Yes, minutia is just overwhelming these children's lives when they need to be focusing on 80% of their life, or their life from K through 12 at school needs to be focused on things that are going to make them marketable, right? Like, and be able to get off mom and dad's payroll, right? Whereas they're teaching them about stuff that is just, and not all that important. Not to say that some of that stuff isn't important, but I feel like we're putting way too much emphasis on some of this,
like what
DEI stuff, and all these crazy books,
environmental,
and pretty much all the stuff that we're talking about constantly, and that's being shoved down our throats on the news. All that stuff.
I think
you get back to arithmetic, reading, like the basics.
Yeah, and even I would even argue in some cases though that, like, I mean, look, I went to a business school and I don't really use a whole lot of math. I mean,
I went to community college and then went to a business school, so I didn't have to take all the humanities and all the other BS stuff that you had to take.
I wish I had thought of that,
cheaper.
But I didn't think of that.
Better
back
value,
then, right? All I thought was
rebranded.
Yes.
Blinders on. I'm going to business school because I'm going into business and I'm going to be in sales and marketing, advertising, whatever. And that was my thing. And, I think I've said this for many, many years. I don't think kids have a freaking clue what they want to do when they're 18 years old. Some do, but
what are you talking about?
Majority of children
we've set up a thing now within our, how old are your children? What grade?
13.
What's grade your oldest?
7th
grade. Wait till they get to 9th grade, and they get the book to go to high school, and you're like, you need to pick your career plan.
Yeah, I'm
like,
ridiculous.
Dude, there's people who can't pick their career plan when they get out of high school, right? You want them to pick it in front of high school, and so it was one of those things. That's my
point. Yeah.
It's like, let's just get to the basic stuff that we can have. Again, kids that can make the right decision whether they want to. I think it's one of those things of, to your point of, I had to go to business school, right? My thing was, my dad was a cop, and my mom worked as an office manager for a dental hygienist. For a dentist. So it was like, you need to go to college. This. And so with my boys, it's like, hey, college is an option, but so is a trade.
Yeah.
And so is the military. And the way that it costs to go to college nowadays, and it's one of those things of as far as belonging to something, right? So it's like the military. It's like, you have a band of brotherhood, right?
3 square meals a day.
But you also
exercise.
You also learn to be an active adult, right?
Yeah.
And so those sort of things that I think is it's all on the table for my kids, for my boys. And so it's like, you want to be a plumber, you want to be an electrician, you want to be an HVAC, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. Because
blue collar revolution is upon us. I mean, these guys get paid really well.
Yeah.
And the girls.
For sure. But it's one of those things of we just need to make sure that they have those basic things. And we talk about test scores, and again, we want our test scores to be the best that they can be. And again, one of those things that came up in the book, which was, again, when it comes back to statistics, when you're looking at statistics of in the past of certain grades and all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, you also got to look at how many people you had take that test.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if you had kids that were like, there's only a certain amount of kids that are going to go to college and they're going to take the ACT or they're going to take the SAT, right? That was the test score. And those were the smart kids that were going to go to college, right? The other kids were like, I ain't taking that. I ain't going there, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, no, we all have to take it. So now you have kids that are like, I don't even want to take this stupid test.
Yeah, it's dragging the average.
But I got to do it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if you take out the ones that don't want to be there and you're like the average, you're like, holy crap, they're actually smarter than they were in the past.
Mm.
Yeah, it's amazing. I tell my kids all the time that I just want to see them try.
It's effort.
And if you have a person taking a test that's not trying, the result isn't going to be pretty.
Never.
It's always about effort. And with my boys, it's always about effort. And they'll come home with a grade and I'll be like, did you give 100% effort? Right? Because again, it's education. And if you were perfected at it, then you didn't need to go there. Right? So you should fail so that you can learn to be better.
Well,
and so it's one of those things.
You bring up a great point because I've made this argument before. We're talking about scores. We're talking about if you fail, right?
Yep.
They have this thing here in
I'll give you that.
where
and
if
I
you
struggle
score
with
under 70, you can retake the test.
That's true, and I struggle with it. But the other flip side of that is I do struggle with it because I'm like,
Sorry, you failed. Like,
I struggle with it from the standpoint of if my boys, and again, but it comes back home to the home, right? If you go to your kids and like, no, I don't care. I got a test tomorrow, but no, don't worry. I'm just going to fail it, and then I'm going to get a 70. No, that ain't acceptable. That's BS.
I told my daughter,
right?
She said that. I told her I was going to call the teacher and tell her not to let her take the test again.
I'm in the same point with you. But if it's one of those things like I did it, I got a 60 on it, and I studied, I did the right things, blah blah blah. It just for whatever reason didn't. Hey, did you get the test back? Those sort of things, and it's all about the concepts. Get the concepts right so that you go to the next level, so that you're like proficient in the next thing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that this is selling my kids short, so I'll just tell it. But I'm not like going, you got to be in the top, 5% of your class so that you can go to blah, 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 right? It's like, it's one of those things of like, I want you to know and learn so that you can be a productive adult when you come out.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I'm with you.
That's me in a nutshell.
Well, I think everybody wants their kids to be productive members of society, right? Like in whatever that is for them, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a trade or the military or corporate America
or both or whatever, right?
Or any combination thereof.
I think everybody has a trajectory too, and once the expectations go above that trajectory, they start putting a little bit too much pressure on themselves. And the truth is that, you don't have to make a B in order to become a doctor. You just have to make a D, I mean, they still call the last guy that they graduated from
doctor
medical school
for
a doctor, right? Like, and it's not a big deal necessarily.
But when's the last time you went to the doctor and go, excuse me, can I see your grade point average, please?
Exactly.
Before you slice me open, can we see what you did in anatomy? Because I want to make sure you got the right thing.
Yeah.
But the truth is the people that are so good at academia, a lot of them are just good test takers. And they're not necessarily passionate about their profession. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best doctor. Right. A C average student may be the best doctor that you could possibly get.
They could have the best bedside manner and all those things, whatever that makes you the best doctor, to your point.
It could be a hack, but they're nice guys.
You could literally be a serial killer.
Cut me open.
Right?
But I do. Right. But back to that, I think a lot of that again plays back to the pressure that we put on our kids. That again, sometimes you think back, you're like, I didn't have that same pressure. Like my parents, they were involved, but they weren't that involved, right? And so it's one of those things of, does that then lead to the mental, the mental crisis that we have with our kids that are feeling the pressure that they can't handle it and they don't have a frontal lobe that's developed yet, so they know how to handle those things. I mean, we live in North Texas, so like if you're playing sports and you're not going D1, you suck.
Right.
What?
That's ridiculous.
I mean, what?
That's so ridiculous.
Right? But that's the pressure that these kids think that they're, if I'm not D1, it's like, no, just enjoy being part of the team, being the best you can be. Not everybody's going to be LeBron James. And believe me, LeBron James knew he was going to be LeBron James before he was in high school.
Yeah, you can
right?
tell. Sometimes.
Right? So it's like.
The talent level.
He exudes confidence.
And he had a beard. And he had a beard when he was like, Five, I think.
Yeah.
So like he was
bald at 11.
Yeah, so he was going for greatness at 5 with that beard.
Yeah, HGH.
Anyways, you know what I'm saying? So
I do.
So again, that doesn't answer any of those things. But again, that's the way I kind of think about these things. About like let's just have a conversation and let's just go through things. I mean, one of the moms was, at the school board meeting in the bus thing, right? And she's like, that's just ridiculous. They have all these cameras on these buses. Yeah. Somebody should be reviewing every one of those videos.
Or at least once during the year.
Wait.
Which they didn't, apparently.
But like, they should be reviewing those every single day. And you're like, okay, fair. Let's think about that. How many bus routes are there? Like, how many buses are there? Probably like 100 at least, right?
I would think so.
Let's go with 100. They at least go to 3 different schools, and they do it twice a day.
600.
Right. So we can't get teachers, right? We can't pay teachers enough based upon what people think. But yet we're going to pay somebody to watch a video that 99.9999% of the time, nothing happened on the bus.
Well, it did happen
But it does happen on the
all
bus.
the time on that one bus.
But spot checking, maybe.
But it does.
There's a solution.
There should be.
You got to figure out what it is.
There should be statistics.
Yes.
Like 3% is what a material amount is in statistics, right?
For sure.
So we should be looking at sample sizes of these cameras, of this video footage. And if we aren't, then that's a problem. But nobody knows if we are or aren't now, because there's, again, like this cone of silence that, the superintendent operates under it, seemingly, especially with regards to the bus situation. So, I mean, if they could come out with a way to say, hey, this is what we're going to do to address this type of situation.
Sure.
God forbid any one of our other kids, who we all are putting our kids in this situation, like, hope my kid doesn't go, our kids don't go through this, They want to know and feel comfortable that, you're doing something to try and catch a predator.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think every parent wants their kid to be safe in every situation, and they should want that. Yeah. Here's the bold facts. None of us can guarantee that.
No.
None of us can. But yet
I don't even want that.
But we put a series of expectation that people can't live to. As far as AI has not been able to predict yet, is creeps and killers, right? And
it's
so
coming though.
The
precogs are on their way.
It might, but what I'm saying is, like,
is.
those things, like, nobody's a killer until they kill somebody, or a creep until they get caught. I mean, it's those sort of things that it's a horrible thing, and no kids should be involved in that.
Yeah.
Right.
But it does happen. I'm with you from the standpoint, if something does happen, let's be transparent on what we learn from it and how we're going to move forward from it.
Well, that's I think a big part of the big problem.
But the problem, the problem is
that dialogue.
Right. The other problem is like, unfortunately, we need more of a dialogue of, like, that's what we want. What's the timeline? What's the timeline that is going to be needed for you to end the other investigation or litigation that you have with, like, give us a timeline of, like, when's that's over.
Yeah, they need to wrap it up.
Because you realize that does have to happen, right? I mean, like, I can't say anything until this is done.
Yeah.
Right? So, like give us an expectation of, like, hey, where are we at with that? We're still not in it. Believe me, we understand you guys want what we're going to do. We've already put this in place. We can't talk about it yet until this is over.
Yeah.
I think that's what truly people want. But it's like, to try to, like, I get you in, like, criminal offenses, and, like, superintendents purposely trying to do this to hurt your kid. I don't know it'd be true, but I just can't think that that's what people are trying to do.
I don't think that's going on. I don't think she's, I don't think Holly is out to get anybody per se. I just feel like there's some backdoor communications going on. One, that circumvent, Garrett Linker, for one. I know that happened, right? Like, and then two, there's another email account that she's set up that she's talking about this whole Frank Paniagua situation with. And then you have the same law firm that was going to do the internal investigation that's basically representing the ISD, which is just, like, really, it's just a terrible decision making. Like, it doesn't even.
Those are just.
They could even pay off a different firm. It's just bad optics.
But in those things,
it's bad.
Right,
period.
but in those things, again, the sole employee of the school board is Holly.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm bringing back up.
So did the school board pick? Did they not look at that and go, that doesn't really make sense? We should get a different law firm. I don't know. I wasn't part of that.
Well,
right?
Wasn't there a vote? I thought they did, they voted on something.
The public got outraged about it, and they pretty much demanded it. And they're like, they finally said something. The school board finally said something. And it grew a backbone and became,
And it should be one of those things like, does this smell right to me? Right? I mean, that's when it comes down to, like, being a parent on the other side, to be like, if I was on the other side of the dais, would I be like, this makes sense?
Yeah.
And that's what I bring to the table, to be like, that don't make sense. Like, sorry, I can't see that somebody on the other side would think that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, we should question that. We should look into that.
We're coming up on time soon. I got one more question for you, and then want to hear your elevator pitch as to why you for school board. What are your thoughts on Google Classroom?
What's my thought on
screens constantly in front of students, and like we've had this conversation a couple of times with previous candidates, and we've, as I think as a society, starting to move away. I mean, Google is permeating the classroom, and there's a lot more like Chromebooks and screens and iPads, and there's a lot less textbooks, a lot less handwriting, and
technology is pervasive in schools.
And it's causing
from an early age.
It's causing neurological issues. It's causing physical ailments. You know, I know my daughter started to get really bad headaches, and like her neck's always turning a certain way, and they're not, you know, writing, they're typing, and they don't know how to write, and they, you know, like it's an issue. And so I'm just curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought because I think it's just not one. I think it can explode into different options because I've heard you talk to different people on that same topic, and it's an interesting question as far as like what is it, but it's also you also hear then. Okay, so would you agree that we could probably agree that having stuff on, not that it's right, but having stuff on Google Classroom could make somebody's job more efficient and time effective when it comes to grading and getting content and all that sort of stuff out.
Yeah, it'd make it almost on autopilot where they don't even really.
Okay, so we agree that it like could speed things up and it relieves some extra effort from other things, right? But in the same time, right, you can hear from the same camp that teachers don't get paid enough. They're overworked. And they don't get paid enough for the work that they do and all that sort of stuff. And
they never will be.
Right. Would their workload be more or less if we took the Chromebooks away and went back to paper and they had to correct, worksheets and all that sort of stuff on paper versus on the Chromebook?
I don't know how much difference in time that is. Like, you still got to read through the things and, look at what they wrote. Did they pick A, B, C, D?
If they picked A, B, or C, or D, it automatically kind of just bloop, and that's what their answers were. They get 100%, they get a whatever, and they get wrong, right?
What would be easiest if they just put an Xbox in the classroom and everybody just sat down and played video games all day long. You know how easy that'd be?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
those teachers wouldn't have to do shit.
Doesn't that also remove the personal kind of
for sure? And it's one of those things that
interaction.
It's funny that because you guys were talking about after COVID and now Chromebooks and they have to. And I went to my boys before because they were in elementary school obviously before COVID, and I'm like, hey, did you they all had their computers in the cart, right? And so every classroom, they pulled their computer out of the cart and they went to work and they did their stuff. So this Chromebook thing isn't a new thing. It's a new thing that they're taking it home and they're traveling with it in their backpack because we've been for years since they've been in elementary school have the Chromebook cart in their classroom.
Yeah.
They're just using it more.
They're just using it more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so
it used to be kind of shared on the cart. And everybody had like a central charging station, essentially,
for sure.
Right? That was the cart. It was a charging station, and it was a big whatever. But they didn't use it as much. Now they're using it a whole lot. And personally, I don't have as much problem with high schoolers using it, even junior hires. But when you start looking at elementary school creativity, these kids' brains are still maturing from a creative standpoint,
for sure,
overwhelmingly.
For sure. And I would say it's an interesting thing again culturally, right? Because your oldest is how old? 11. So when you're 11-year-old, when you first went out to eat with your 11-year-old, how often did they have an iPad that was sitting in front of them while they were at the restaurant with mom and dad?
Very rarely.
Very rarely, right? You go that now on any one of these places that we eat in Prosper, McKinney. How many of them have their kids with an iPad?
None of mine will.
It's funny you say that.
Yours don't because
you're spring break.
Right.
My daughter actually looked over and said to us, "Is that what we look like sometimes?" Because there were two kids that were like elementary school kids. Like it was like an 8 and a 6-year-old, and they both had phones, and the parents were sitting there eating, and the kids were sitting there on their phones. And we're all sitting there having a family meal, talking to each other,
for sure.
And no phones are down, like no one's got, And my daughter's like, "Is that why we don't have?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly why, because none of those 4 people are having a conversation."
Right. But that happens. But that happens all the time, right? But then all of a sudden you're like, "Well, I don't want my kid to be on a computer at school." Oh, but your kid's by the age I remember when our boys, when they first were born, it was like, they can't see the TV until they're 2 because it'll mess up their eyes, right?
Mm-hmm. Don't sit so close.
Yeah, now you see infants with mommy and daddy's iPhone going through Kroger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's a cultural shift, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's right or wrong, and whether it's going to have long-term effects, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
But
sure it will.
Again, it's one of those things of, I think creativity is even dead from a standpoint of like, think about how many you're taking your 3-year-old or right 3-year-old 3-year-old to soccer, right? Versus going like, go to the playground and like eat mud and like make things out of imaginary things, right? Like,
we did that after soccer practice too,
right?
But
you know what I'm saying?
Both. But I do understand.
But we've come to a culture where
more
it's like
structured culture.
Cultured play. I mean, structured play versus like just use your imagination and just go do something, right?
Free play.
Like we don't have that anymore. I mean, recesses have been, anyways. I mean, I think it's just one of those things that I think you're right. Whether we're going to see and go back and say, remember, they shouldn't have done that. But I think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's a really interesting thing that I don't have the answer to.
Yeah,
so
I'm just
do
curious.
they do it more? I don't. Do they do it? Should they have it on more? I don't know.
I think at a certain age, it's like you said. I think high school is probably because at some point they are going to need to do that. At college, they're going to have that, right? They're going to be doing more because they're getting more prepared for, the workforce in theory, right? But,
it's part of
middle
business.
school. Like I still think you're still creating. Your creative brain is still developing heading into high school and beyond. And I think there's a better cutoff time.
I couldn't
for
agree.
That, and I think we should.
What it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have
Just
the
curious.
answer.
Okay.
No.
Well, it takes all types, right? And you forge a path for your children, and they'll either rebel or they'll get on board with your ideology, and whichever they decide, pretty soon ball's going to be in their court, and they're going to be off your payroll. Right?
Yeah. That's the goal.
Whether they're ready or not, get out of the
At
house.
some point,
Get
right?
out.
Right or wrong, they gave them that. God gave us the ability to choose, right?
Yeah.
You got to have grace when they choose the wrong way.
That's right. That's right. Amen. Elevator pitch. So why should people vote for you?
Kurt Kuehn. I'm running for Prosper ISD trustee number 5. You should vote for me because I bring geographical diversity to the school board. Again, as the school board, as this district becomes larger east and west, and right now all the decisions are made in the central part of the district. And I think it would benefit by having somebody on either side or both sides of the district. I think it also brings I bring a different thing to the table for the fact of I can help bridge the gap between a city that we're not in all the time with Prosper ISD when McKinney is in a massive growth mode and most of that's going to be into Prosper ISD. And so I think I can help bring a bridge in between those two cities to make sure that our schools are in the right spot, development-wise. We're set up for the future.
Great. Awesome.
Love it.
Man, I really appreciate your guys' time. It's been fun.
He said it again.
I really do.
Hey, we appreciate you being here.
No.
Thank you.
What a nice
Thank
guy.
you. I know. Great guy. Great guy.
Are you going to vote yet? You turned me off.
No.
You turned it off.
Voting
didn't you?
doesn't-
You turned it off.
Voting doesn't start till April 24th.
April 24th.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you listening? Damn.
All right, dudes and dudettes, that's a wrap for this episode of Dudes Talking Freedom. Special shout out to Kurt Kuehn, Prosper ISD School Board Trustee, Place 5 candidate, for joining us in studio tonight. For DTF, this is Jeremy,
This is Luke.
and we'll see you next time.